So obviously, Cam, we spoke via Twitter, didn't we, a few weeks ago now?
Yeah, tweeting other tweets.
Yeah, trying to get together. Obviously, you do your podcast. I do mine with two other co-hosts. Yeah, I do mine with two other co-hosts. One, and we touch on, as I said, we touch on the 90s albums and films in our podcast, where we do a different year every episode, and it was kind of just getting the perspective of the US side of what was big in the 90s in the US in both albums and films. Was there much British representation really in the 90s? There probably wasn't really. You probably had some things like film wise, for example. I'm guessing films like Trainspotting probably was quite big, wasn't it, over there?
It had to have been, because Fox Searchlight was becoming a big deal, just promoting all these indie films, and the period pieces were becoming a thing. I think Emma with Paltrow and Ewan McGregor was a big one too.
Oh, really? That's interesting. I don't think I did much over here.
And obviously, you had British actors in American productions like Star Trek: First Contact. So there's that. And
because I mean that's quite a big thing now, isn't it? There is a lot of especially in TV, isn't there? There's a lot of British actors in TV and that now, isn't there?
Totally. There was a lot of TV shows coming to the big screen, so you had plenty of cartoon movies.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't really think of that.
Mystery Science Theater, the movie, and then even the Jerky Boys, which were a prank calling comedy group, got their own stupid movies. So it just
Jackass and all that, wasn't it, as well, and things like
that. I was surprised how late Jackass came to the thing. It was like 99, 2000, and I never paid much attention at the time, but it was big at every school I went to. There wasn't any school who hadn't not seen it. There was people who just loved just outrageous pranks that they would be like, "Oh my god, that's amazing," and just rewind the tape till it broke. And DVDs becoming a thing in the 2000s, but they're trying it out like in the late 90s a bit.
Yeah, we had one. There's one that come over the UK a bit later on. It's exactly the same format, and they were copying Jackass. It was called Dirty Sanchez. I guess you probably didn't get that. And it was some Welsh guys doing exactly the same thing. It was.
I heard about them, but I think they took a while before they came around here, and it didn't help that the region wars was a thing. It's just so funny how CDs you can basically play anywhere.
Yeah.
And movies, whole different story, and so you would have to get a region free player. And
that's right, I forgot about that. Region 1 and 2s. We had Region 1 and 2s. Of course, I forgot about all of that. It was a nightmare, wasn't
it? This is like Japan and America have the same region, but yet China and Sweden and some of these other countries is like they go through like regions like 2 through 5, and you're like, oh my god.
I completely forgot about that.
It was a culture war before we had today's culture wars.
Definitely.
And I didn't know how much of it was, I don't want to see this kind of cultural humor that's our government doesn't approve of, or what have you. You don't know.
I always remember the one big thing I always remember from the 90s, especially with films, was it took about 3 to 6 months for a film in the US to come over to the UK. It took a long time.
I bet. And definitely years before, you get to the late 2000s, and then everyone's sharing movies over the internet, and then studios are wondering, hey, what do you mean you've already seen that movie, or it already has reviews, and it's about it. You're like, by the time it gets here to either country, people have already seen it on the internet and reviewed it on their blog and said it was great or it was a piece of shit. People are now paying more attention to the blogger who often thinks like the average Joe, as opposed to, an A-list critic who, might be thinking like a critic, but not necessarily have any connection to the audience half the time.
Yeah, it was weird this end being UK. I suppose it added to the anticipation though, so especially if there was a really big hyped film, for example, and and you was reading these reviews, and it was, I don't know, even getting really good reviews. It just added to the anticipation. You were so desperate for it to come over. And then obviously then you had things like pirate video as well. So then you'd try and get hold of a pirate because you were so desperate for it to come over, like waiting for it to come over. It's bizarre. Like nowadays it's literally on Sky the same day it's in the cinema, isn't it? It's ridiculous. So
yeah, everyone takes it for granted now. There's like, they're even using video on demand, and you're like, well, so streaming is basically taken over direct to video or made for TV.
yeah, Netflix is like that. Yeah, Netflix is pretty much the direct to video, isn't it? It's right. It is bizarre, but I kind of miss that.
When I use that contrast, I'm like, well, it didn't see a single theater, so what do you want me to call it?
Yeah, no, it is exactly that, isn't it? And it's
and I'm not, and that's just it. It's like everyone thinks, oh, you're saying direct to video, it's bad quality. I'm like, well, that's the quality everyone associates with it half the time. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it didn't meet a single theater screen, so it's the equivalent of giving it straight to a Blockbuster video store, or
yeah, definitely
premiering on TV, followed by a VHS DVD release.
Yeah,
with extra content, that they couldn't show on TV.
Yeah, exactly. It's bizarre, isn't it? It's weird how it does that, because we just it's completely different over here now. And like you say, we used to have to wait for months before that stuff. But now it's music wasn't like that. Music was maybe a week or two, as far as I'm aware. But
they wanted to dominate the radio charts, and so it's just so wild. When they were promoting by having the artists come in and perform on a talk show, do you think they did as much touring as they do now, where they tour about the song and then they go overseas onto other talk shows and talk about it?
Did they do as much? No, I don't think they do. Albums were, again, in the 90s, I think, were a much bigger deal than they are now. It's Spotify, isn't it? It's all singles now, isn't it?
Spotify, and people are doing Zoom calls because it's more convenient now. And I just find it interesting how you were seeing more kind of circus freaks and stunt performer kind of guys come in on a show and do something funny. I definitely recall there being a lot more stand-up comedians getting a moment.
Yeah.
And that would still is like, I performed at Jay Leno, and I was on a UK show. I was on a Brazilian talk show. I got to play, pin the tail on the donkey, with a soap opera star. Just else. And but yeah, I see Graham Norton do it, and obviously, people like Conan O'Brien doing it, but I really I kind of saw it here and there in the 90s, but it wasn't a constant like it seems to be now.
No, exactly. It's definitely changed, isn't it? I mean, I've lost touch with a bit of the music scene, to be fair, now as I've got older, but I just don't think albums are a big thing no more. It's all singles, isn't it, really? Whereas in the 90s, I think albums used to just be they were an event. You'd wait for an album, you'd be looking forward to it coming out. Was
totally concur. It's bastardized now, whereas like everyone thought, oh, the single, and then you follow that with albums. Like, nope, that's just the single. I'm good for just this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Another single in 2 years.
Single after single now, isn't it?
I'll have you guys get tired of it, and everyone will be listening to it. Your girlfriend's gonna be listening to it. Class.
Yeah.
Listening to it.
Yeah, exactly. So what were the top albums then of the 90s in the US?
Okay, so for the US, this comes from Declutter, 2017 blog. So he used this data from SoundScan data.
Right.
Not familiar with that category so well because it came from my damn country. I'm not familiar. So number 10 was the Backstreet Boys and the album of the same name. They sold 9.2 million. And
yeah, they were quite big, weren't they, Backstreet Boys? I know my wife was a big fan of them.
9 was Garth Brooks' "Roping the Wind" album. I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah, he was. I mean, we heard of Garth Brooks over here, but we knew he was huge in the US, but he wasn't that big over here. But he was known.
Yeah,
he's huge
is that
over
for
there.
Country in general, like where it pretty much just dominates the US and it's not really meant to go overseas?
Yeah, no, he was. Yeah, I was aware that he was massive over there, but like I say, we knew him here, but
just has that cowboy mentality, and it's like and it was rubbing off on us when we realized is like, okay, it's kind of an outdated kind of thing, but if you're in a southern state, then it's going to be dominating the airwaves there.
Yeah.
Then number 8 on the list was the Backstreet Boys' second album, Millennium.
Oh, really?
So 9.4 million copies were sold. And just because of the single "I Want It That Way" is on there, and it was the 5th best-selling album of that era. And like, geez,
really,
the most shipments of an album in a year, 11 million. Jesus.
Yeah, Christ.
And then this is where we backfold into movie soundtracks. We got the Titanic soundtrack at number 7 with 9.8 million copies sold.
Yeah.
It just has the whole.
Considering it's only got really one song on it, the rest is an instrumental, isn't it? Really.
Right. It's just the "My Heart Will Go On" was played, and James Horner's songs and other part of the score were obsessed over by the audience. So there you go.
Yeah. Just.
And Cracked Rear View by Hootie and the Blowfish. So there you go. You got alternative.
Again, that's another band who weren't that big over here. I think a couple of singles, but again,
yeah,
you knew they were massive in America. I know we were always mentioned on like Friends and stuff like that.
And it took me for years to realize I had heard a bunch of them, and I just didn't know their name. I just knew they were big, kind of like some of the people we'll get into eventually here. They just kind of were. This is where country music was becoming kind of pop. It just had to compromise that a bit just to get a little bigger with today's crowd of that time, which was the 90s, and they were, and the article even claims that here is like, even though they were formed in 1986, they were not well known all that much outside of South Carolina. So
So I'm aware of Hootie and the Blowfish, but they weren't, and a couple of songs, but they weren't that big over here at all.
This had "Hold My Hand," "Let Her Cry," and "Drown." Those were like the 3 big singles on that album. So
Hold My Hand's the one. Hold My Hand's the one I remember. The big one. I think my sister used to like that one, and I think I used to just hear that. So yeah, that's the one I recognise. Yeah,
for sure. So that was 9.81 million copies sold. Wow. Number 5 is "Falling Into You" album by Celine Dion. So there you go. The Canadians are.
Yeah.
She was another one who was like, I would hear her songs at like various, malls and everything, and it took me a while. I was like, oh, that's who's playing. Okay. It's played up.
Yeah.
The radio bunch, but I didn't follow it. I wasn't really. It's not that I was or wasn't into pop. I was just kind of more. I went with the flow.
Yeah,
music
definitely.
expert, and my mom wanted to play a bunch of 80s music, so I just kind of I went along for the ride. I was like, okay, I kind of like this, but I'm kind of more of a rock music guy. So this
yeah.
is.
Mm.
but is the 13th highest selling album of all time. So
Really, Christ.
and won Album of the Year at the Grammys and Free World Music Awards. So I take it you heard this also at various like shopping malls or
Yeah. I mean, Celine Dion, to be fair, was
that's when they were adopting that. You couldn't not go to a pharmacy or even a store without hearing some kind of music, playing in the background. It's,
Yeah, it's non-offensive, isn't it? It's non-offensive music, so you can have it anywhere like that, can't you?
Yeah, and that's how they do it. Is like they're gonna play some pop or country or maybe even electronic, but yeah, it can't be anything. Just if it's rock or rap, it's got to be something just non-vicious or that doesn't have any foul-mouthed lyrics.
Yeah, exactly. But no, yeah, Celine actually she fell into the UK top 10. That album, Falling Into You, I think it was number 10 in the UK.
It just had that international appeal, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So number 4 is the Bodyguard soundtrack by Whitney Houston for the movie of the same name.
That was huge, wasn't it? That was, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we owned that one. Actually, I remember that one. I think everyone did. That was in everyone's house. That one. It
spent various weeks on the Billboard 200 charts. So, jeez, and this researcher noted that Adele's 21 album claimed that record in 2012. So,
okay.
But yeah, over 45 million copies worldwide. But it's sold.
Ain't bad, is it?
6 million. So
that's not bad.
Not bad. First album to sell over 1 million copies in a week. So that's just it. Like everyone just remembers the soundtrack more than the movie, and that says a lot. Because I think in the movie, like they're mainly just playing the songs at the beginning and end.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just find it wild how half the time you'll hear the songs and then you have to remind some people still it's like it's from this movie or that movie. Oh, I heard about it. I heard it was good. I heard it sucked. I heard this and that. But I never saw it.
The beginning of the 90s especially was when it was albums had soundtracks, didn't they? You look at we speak about this briefly on our show, but you had you think the 91 you had Robin Hood, didn't you? Then you had The Bodyguard. Yeah. Then you had 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Was that big over there? Wet, Wet, Wet.
I was actually. It's funny you brought that up. My parents were actually just clearing out their garage and looking at movies they had taped off, the satellite channels like HBO and everything, and that was one of the movies on there.
Yeah. So again,
comedy shows.
If your film had a big hit behind it, it did well, didn't it? Really, that was.
You could sell the soundtrack sometimes packaged with the movie itself. I see.
Yeah, and the videos would have clips of the movie as well, wouldn't it? So it just. Just big
dialogue that are like part of the soundtrack and stuff that at the time you have to get used to. Is like the person speaking from this part of the movie.
You can't just get hypnotized everywhere you go, wouldn't you? Just these bloody
hypnotized is definitely the best way to put it.
No, that was a big one. I remember that one.
Sure.
What else you got?
So number 3 is Metallica and the album the same name, also known as the Black Album. It sold 11.7 million, and it's kind of wild that nowadays I see a lot of people lampoon them, and other people like that's still like their top metal band, and I'll see. So this is due to Nothing Else Matters and Enter Sandman, which I can't go a day without hearing on the radio, and this person even remarks and links into another article saying it sells around 5,000 copies a week. It's just is the album. It's a Highlander. It cannot die. It's immortal. And
yeah, Metallica. Yeah, they were pretty big over here. Yeah, again, yeah, odd one really.
you guys were into thrash metal, okay? Well,
Yeah, I wouldn't say not massively, but they were one of the bands that kind of did break over here as well. So yeah, but not massively, but yeah, everyone would know Metallica over here.
I mean, it's kind of. I really am surprised by that because this was back. It was slowly making little breakthroughs because in the 80s, metal was kind of more just again music that the young adults and teens were listening to, and it wasn't popular with adults who were very strict, and conservative about, it's promoting Satan and all that, Yeah. The 90s as much as the pop music, and 90s is basically the chance for them to just make it a little more commercial, both pop and metal, and
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I was really taken back by this. I'm like, okay, number 3, okay, interesting. I would have thought they would have had some other album that preceded it, but no, it's just those 2 singles and the other riffs on it are very big.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Cool. And so we're down to 2 more once again. And once again, Canada has a big factor in this.
Yeah, so I think I know where you're going to go with these two.
So number 2, we got 12.1 million sold of Shania Twain's "Come On Over" album, and again, she's a Canadian country pop star.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And over 15 million sales to date of this album. It is the best-selling country album of all time and the second highest-selling album of this era.
Yeah, she was pretty big over here, actually, Shania Twain, as well, yeah.
It's wild. And then followed by Alanis Morissette's "Jagged Little Pill."
yeah, that was massive over here as well, yeah. Good album, to be fair. And it was different at the time.
And it is wild, like, because... I mean, this brings it up too. Is like it was her 3rd album, but it was the first to be released in the U.S., so it made a big giant impression. So many people would say, "Oh, I've heard all her albums." They're like, "No, you haven't." These other 2.
Yeah.
And so,
I think her 2 previous ones were quite different music, though, wasn't it? Wasn't it more like poppy or dancey, wasn't it? I think, if I remember. I don't think I've heard them, but I think I've heard that rumor that they are.
I think I went through some of her material on her deep cuts, and it is kind of the music is like, I'm not sure I would put it on a playlist, but I have heard a bunch of it, and some of it is mostly agreeable. It's just after a while you kind of this is how young I was just coming into it. I was just mixing her up with all the other various pop artists that were a big deal at that time. So, I had trouble keeping up with all of it, and my parents weren't necessarily keeping up with it either. So I had to just kind of connect the dots eventually. It's wild though. This album was rejected by every major record label until Maverick Records picked it up for whatever reason. They weren't digging it. And Morissette was the youngest artist to win the 96 Grammy Album of the Year until Taylor Swift's win in 2010. So that's very wild. But yeah, it was a 14-time platinum album and sold massive 13.5 million copies in the 90s alone. So
yeah, it was huge. It was huge, wasn't it? It was big over here as well.
Mm-hmm. It was her relatable angst, they said, that just kind of was countering a lot of the grunge rock like Nirvana that was big at that point.
Yeah. It was that crossover, wasn't it? It did have a good crossover. Yeah, definitely. And it was, I think it was also for females as well, wasn't it? Really, that kind of breakup. That breakup. Us men are idiots, and
it was very positive, and it just was very intriguing. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
do you want me to link you either of these articles, or?
Yeah, can do. Yeah, if you could do that. Yeah, I wouldn't know how to do that. So yeah, but yeah, I'd appreciate that. Let me go through the UK ones just quickly, because there's some crossover But just let me know if you've heard of some of these, because it is a bit different. There's some crossovers, but I'll be intrigued just to know. So we've got Celine Dion, Falling Into You. Then we've got ABBA, the Gold album, which is obviously the best of. I don't know why that. I'm trying to think of why that came out again in the 90s. I don't know if it was just timing or was. Yeah, but then we've got the Verve. Were they big over there?
Yes. Yeah, that's the same list I saw. That was for there.
Yeah, urban hymns. So, to be fair, they weren't that big over here until that album. The album did kind of put them on the map over here as well. Mm-hmm. Then we've got Madonna, the Immaculate Collection. I'm guessing that's the best of.
I think so, because at that point she was just kind of coasting on that. She was doing movies like Evita, you know. And...
Yeah. So that's broke into the top 10. I'm quite surprised with that one. Not that Madonna's not big, but it's just a case of it's a best of kind of thing.
Yeah. So many people could coast on something they had done a decade ago, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of bizarre. But this one will make you laugh, because these two are a bit of a joke over here now.
I'd never heard of them, and I'm sure you can fill me in.
But Robson and Jerome, you never heard of them?
I had never heard of them, and it seems like they were hot for a minute, but not for. They were infamous, I guess.
They used to be on a TV show over here called Soldier. It was just a 1 hour weekly drama used to be on. It wasn't that big. I didn't really ever used to watch it, but I knew of it. It was quite big over here. And then they just suddenly, I don't know, started to do all these cover songs, and they were getting to number one, and they were massive, absolutely massive over here. But they are seen as a bit of a joke now. But at the time they were like I say, just any cover song they did, it just got to number one. It was stupid. But yeah, so that was quite funny. They're kind of national treasures over here for a comical reason, really. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me. He's up there, because it was they were big at the time. And then we got Alanis Morissette, number 5. So like I say, yeah, she was big over here. The Cause, number 4, were they big? The Cause?
If they were probably they were probably getting, I guess, what the Clash was getting, just kind of play here and there. But yeah, I don't know for a fact. Actually.
Yeah, they were little Irish bands. They were all a family, 3 girls and a boy, very poppy. And it was the late 90s. I think it was about 98, 99, to be fair. They just, I don't know how many albums they did overall, but just one particular album had a few singles on it that did well, and they had their little moment. Weren't around for long, probably a couple of years, and then that was it, really.
Wow.
But yeah, nothing, not much to get excited about, really, but they're over. And then we've got the big one, Spice Girls. Spice, their debut album. I mean, were they big over there, the Spice Girls? They must have been. They were big everywhere, weren't they?
Yes. Yeah, they were dominating the charts. They were... for whatever reason, my father was trying to get one of their songs stuck in my head the other day, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, they just burst on the scene over here, and it was ridiculous. They were everywhere. You turn on the telly, they were... it was just crazy, absolutely crazy. You couldn't, like I say, you couldn't do anything without them being somewhere. And then they did that awful film as well. Just went too far with it. But yeah, they were absolutely huge. Only really for a few years, and then they kind of died off. It always happens over here. Everyone, I don't know if it's the same over there, but everyone just has their moment for a few years over here. Everyone just goes so stupid with it, and then they just get bored of it.
Yeah, you don't know how much of it is their manager forcing them into it, or taking the stupidest song you could get. You don't know. It's just like, okay, well,
yeah, exactly.
You're a big deal now.
Yeah. And then we've got Simply Red. You aware of them?
Simply. I swear I have heard the name, but
Do you know what? You're lucky. I hate this band, Can't bear them. But yeah, just a Manchester band. Again, kind of soul pop. I would like to say. Yeah, he's got quite a soul voice, the lead singer. But yeah, I couldn't bear them. But they were big over here. Then again, just I don't know. Just I can't really explain the music. Really, it wasn't all really kind of love. This songs you'd have at discos kind of thing, really. You know, you're dancing and yeah, nothing brilliant. I couldn't bear them. And then number one, no surprise, I've really is Oasis with What's the Story, Morning Glory. Yeah, they were like I said, that's their second album, but they were huge over here. I'm not a fan of Oasis, really, not really. I didn't like their attitude. I don't like them as people. I think they're just arrogant. I like some of their music, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't really, I never really got into them.
I think a lot of people got sick of their songs getting repeat play after a while, but at the same time, some of it is catchy and I guess
I can appreciate it, but I wasn't a big fan of theirs, I must admit. But they were huge over here. Yeah, they were massive. And then obviously they split up. I can't remember exactly when, but I think their first two albums are massive, and then I think the third album, where they become so big, I think everyone expected too much of them, and it just didn't do well, and then they just started to fade away a little bit. But they're still going, aren't they? As well as singles, not as Oasis, but obviously Noel's got his band and Liam's got his band as well. So, and they're still arguing, so that's good. But yeah, so it's a little similar to the US, but a little bit.
It's a predicament because basically you got to find out who's got talent versus organization and can present this all in time and everything, and you do wonder half the time if half the breakups are due to just disagreeing with what their managers are asking them to do and what have you, and it's like, jeez, whatever it is.
No, it can be too much, can't it, sometimes, and some people just can't handle it. Simple as that, really.
It really is.
Yeah, but no, it's interesting is that when you compare the two lists of the UK to the US, it is quite interesting. And there is a bit of difference and a couple of crossovers as well.
Yeah, I was really surprised. I was like, really? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of films for the 90s, I know we touched on. I'm just kind of more intrigued on what UK films. I know you said Emma was a big one, and then I know we kind of touched on Four Weddings and a Funeral. Was there any other like big UK? Because over here it would be stupid for you to say to me what US films would be, because anything that was big over there was big over here, really. It's not like the albums where you go, oh no, that wasn't really big over here. It was like Terminator 2, was huge, Jurassic Park. All the big ones that were big over there were going to be big over here. But I think just the other way around. I think the other way around, UK films. I think it's different. It was a case of UK films had to break America to get recognised. I think there's a lot of probably British films you're unaware of actually at all. You'd be like, never heard of it at all.
What about the gangster movie ID? That seemed like that was a big
ID. Yeah. Was that big over there? Was that?
I don't think it was, but I think it became kind of through a bunch of individual labels, kind of like how Tartan Asia brought a bunch of 90s like Japanese and South Korean movies here that were big in the late 90s, like Audition. But in terms of British stuff, I think this is going to be predictable, but I think a lot of the big ones were definitely the James Bond movies. Just Pierce Brosnan was either beloved or hated depending on the person, but his movies were definitely making a lot of money, and and you do 3 of them in the 90s, that's going to be a big deal, and I'm sure even though Timothy Dalton was in the 80s, I'm sure his movies were selling big on VHS along with the other ones. I think it's still like the highest ranked like franchise to date.
Yeah, again, I don't get that. I'm not. I like new ones. I must admit, since they've been done, I do like them. But the older ones, I'm just not. I'm not a Bond fan. I don't get it. Yeah, it baffles me.
I vary on them, but like they're all at least 2.5 to 3 hours long. So I'm not going to spend that much time every day. Just same thing with Star Wars. It's like, okay, I've seen them a bunch growing up. I'm not going to make time for them now, especially if they're on TV where there's going to be 20 different commercials. That's just like watching Lord of the Rings on TV. No, thank you. I have so many other movies and shows I need to be watching and catching up on. I'm not going to make time for that.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I'll get you on that. But I suppose it, like say, we said Train Spotting, that was big over there.
I think it was, and it was definitely getting some like award noms and everything, and it seemed like there was a bunch of even just international productions and war movies. I know there was this one Jonathan Pryce war movie that kind of got seen, and I think Saving Private Ryan was like a American and England co-production. So yeah, that was definitely huge in '98, and I still see many people who, even if they don't care for it, they still think it should have won. Well, which brings me to Shakespeare in Love, I guess.
Oh yeah,
I think that was an English director co-production, but yeah, I mean, that won Best Picture, and I saw so many people saying, "Oh, it wasn't that great."
Yeah, no, exactly.
Should have won.
What about Full Monty? Was that big over there?
Yeah, that in fact. It's funny you bring that up because, like, I don't know if it made its money back. I would have to look at the box office again, but it seemed like it was one of those like everyone in my family had seen it, or just even other people had heard of it, or what have you. And half the time we would see Robert Carl on a big TV show or miniseries, and everyone's like, "Hey, it's what's his name from Full Monty." So yeah, it became one of those things. He's just a likable actor and.
Yeah. He was good. He's a good actor. Yeah.
I know, TV wise, they're kind of movies. Those Richard Sharp war movies starring Sean Bean were kind of big on UK
TV.
TV.
Sharp. Really? Yeah, is that big over there? Yeah.
I think they got replayed. Much like anything on PBS, they would replay a lot of BBC and ITV stuff.
Really? Yeah, sure. I never really watched it over here. It was quite big. It wasn't that big, but that's interesting that it was big over there. Yeah.
Totally. It seemed like that was just the gist of it. Do a big spy, espionage or war movie, or even just do a co-production with another country. Like, I know Fifth Element is probably the biggest French movie here, production. That even though it features a lot of American actors, it was produced by a French film crew, and that was big in the '90s. That's probably, I see so many people still to this day saying that's their favorite sci-fi fantasy movie of all time.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Star Wars was filmed in Pinewood, I think, Studios. So I mean, those special editions definitely made a bunch of money in '97. And then you had Phantom Menace in '99, but there was also, I think, a few other giant like international productions that more or less they were just showing how just about anything from any market was going to become a big thing. They had finally figured out how to get them to release within a year apart of each other, or sometimes, like you say, like 6 months apart. I know New Zealand films like Once Were Warriors was big.
Yeah.
And its sequel later on in '99, What Becomes the Broken Hearted. But that's the other thing too. I see a lot of gangster movies that were becoming kind of a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, like, I was going to say, look, what about Lock, Stock and Two Smoke? But that obviously come back later in the 90s.
That was a big deal. Everyone was kind of following the Guy Ritchie or Quentin Tarantino handbook. I see some people even still argue if Reservoir Dogs counts as a British crime movie because Tim Roth is there as the narc.
Really? Christ.
I'm like, I don't know, man. I just think it's a cool gangster movie. I don't think it's any nationality.
Yeah, no, that's crazy, isn't it? I've never seen it as that. No.
This is also in Pulp Fiction, so there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
There's a few others. It seemed like a lot of them, even some of the European, like Russian and French ones, kind of flew under the radar, but were big on the movie channels. I don't really know. Oh, speaking of Robert Carl, there was this other one. I guess you might have heard of it called Face. Ray Winstone's also in it.
Face.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
One crime movie, and I think that's another one. I don't think it made its money, but I think it's become well liked on a lot of the indie film channels.
Never heard of Face. Let's have a look. Face.
So a lot. I think it was just, if anything, it was just a big year for everyone and everything. If you weren't going to the cinema, it was still finding a lot of stuff at video stores, and then you could find all these other just independently produced movies that kind of kept getting bigger years later.
Wait, was that in the 90s, that Face, then?
Yeah, 97. I'm
gonna try.
I'm sure Gary Oldman was probably making the most money out of any of the English actors, and obviously you had Anthony Hopkins, from Silence of the Lambs. So
yeah. They knew how to cross over, though, didn't they? Like,
that's basically it. Yeah, Jeremy Irons and Die Hard with a Vengeance in '95. That was big.
Cool. Yeah. It was kind of if you played they kind of the British played villains, didn't they, in the 90s? It was always that.
Right. Alan Rickman opened the door, and so they just went for
exactly. It was like that, wasn't it? It was like get all the Brits in, and they could play the villain.
Bruce Payne.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was big on the video store shelves, and it just, out of all the theatrical movies, probably the only one he really did that was big was Passenger 57 with Wesley Snipes. So.
Wesley Snipes. But
yeah,
yeah. The 90s, they were funny, weren't they? Some of them films. But yeah, no, I forgot. But yeah, I forgot about that. He started to do that with all the British actors. Yeah. No, it's good. But yeah, so it's interesting. Wasn't it? The albums and films. That's what I mean. I've always kind of been interested in what the American, the US kind of take of it was, really, because it
really is wild. There's not really any consistency with it as so much as it is just kind of comes and it goes.
Yeah, I suppose it's similar to us, really, isn't it? It might be slightly different in terms of acts or films. Like I say, films is a bit different because I think obviously America have always led on the films. That's always been Hollywood, isn't it? It's always that. So everyone's always kind of like I say, when there is a good film, it's generally good everywhere, isn't it? So whereas music seems to be a bit different. Someone doesn't like that, or it gets big somewhere but not over there. But films do tend to like resonate all over, really, don't they? And obviously
sometimes it's funny when it kind of is like Monty Python, where they're left off the stage, they're not all that funny in their home country, or in all the southern states and local stations that are playing them, and they kind of just became their own cult underground.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's the.
And then you see people say, "Oh, I loved them then." I'm like, yeah, but they weren't loved by everyone then.
No. It's it's bizarre, isn't it? And obviously, you get that. You especially in the 90s, you just get that take.
People try to revise the history, and you're like, it's not it at all.
Yeah, and you used to get that thing,
but don't.
You used to get that thing in the 90s where you couldn't. It used to be over here anyway, where you couldn't. Americans couldn't get our humour, and we couldn't get American humour. And you just think, why not? I never understood that. But it became a little thing. Where it's like they don't get our humour.
It seems like I see people will make an excuse like, oh, it's because of the accents. I'm like, that's not. No.
Yeah.
I think it's more. I think culture's a cop-out. I think it's more just little small things, just like the IT crowd, for instance, is a big one still that I see people talk about, and I think it's just because it's relatable. Every other person has an office jobs that requires computer tech support,
Yeah. I mean, Dad, do you have? Are you aware of our biggest one over here? is a show called Only Fools and Horses. Have you heard of that?
I don't think I have. So was that?
See, that is huge over here. It's probably the if you asked any UK person probably their top comedy show, that would probably be number one. And this is a show was started in like 1982 and went through to the 2000s.
Man, so
it is absolutely huge. I think it's still one of the shows in '96.
Do you think it's just the distributor goofed it up or something like that?
I don't know. The comedy
I get that with Spooks, which is just known here in the States as MI5, but good luck finding everyone who's seen it. It seems like it was kind of much like, the show it was a rival to, 24, where it was just a lot of people saw it, but not everyone, you knew in person had seen it. It just seemed like it was kind of an acquired taste, but even though it's a big, 10-season, spy show, and it got its own movie years later.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I'd be interested to see what I'd recommend you checking it out, see if you can find it. Only Fools and Horses. It's basically just about a family, but it is set in London, and it is kind of, they do use
Only
a lot
Fools
of
and
slang.
Horses.
Only Fools and Horses, yeah, and they use a lot of slang as well. So I don't know if that goes missing with.
Maybe that's it, and I guess maybe it could be the scheduling too. Maybe they keep playing
possibly.
It too late at 3 a.m, and you're like, if you want a better audience, you gotta have this be at least by 6.
Yeah. Go and see if you can check it out. See if let me know what you think of it. But it's much loved over here, and myself. It's always repeated, and it's put, like I say, it's a very big show over here. Like I say, it's probably you'd find hard for anyone to say.
It looks fun. Do you think as time goes by, it's still a big one?
I do. Yeah, I think it. Yeah,
I would say that
repeats it all the time.
The years, it just was always on BBC America or PBS type channels, and
it was huge. It always used to be on. It got so big they used to do specials on Christmas Day, and it would be after the Queen's speech, and it would be like an event. Your family would sit down and go, "Right, Only Fools and Horses is going to be on in a minute," and you'd watch it. And it was like a Christmas Day event. It was it was massive. It's not on no more, but it went from the 80s through to, I'd say, about mid to late 90s, and then it was absolutely huge. Check it out. You might not like it, that's what I mean. That's where I find the comedy side.
I try to. I think the other problem is many Americans will just reject stuff and not try to actually understand it or realize you can still, like, Succession, for instance, is kind of a big deal here, and
I like that.
It's a show that you watch, but you don't really actually enjoy. But it's one of those. It's food for thought. So I think every once in a while there is some guy who understands some kind of satire, and they're able to kind of just, illustrate to people, hey, you gotta just, take a step back and just soak it in. And I think Netflix has been helping in just. Don't get me wrong, they've done a lot of infamous stuff just because, they're like many of the Wall Street tycoons where they're just bidding on random stocks and not making much money that they claim they are. But it does get to that point where it seems like everyone's used to the whole binge-a-thon, do 10 episodes in one day, and maybe only 3 of them really have any substance, and the rest are just kind of, slowly progressing. So I think some people are getting a little more patient, as long as they like the cast and crew or get the overall method. And I really do wish that, I think TV would be way more successful if they just rescheduled everything better and then kind of did like what you guys do with your series, where you got 6 episodes a season.
Yeah.
Pilot is 2 hours, and the rest is, an hour.
Yeah, some 30. Of the US ones are like 20 odd episodes, aren't they? I see.
Yeah, who can get caught up on all that?
Yeah.
Basically, I found out even with doing some of the show reviews we were doing on here is like, you basically got to do 6 episodes a day, and not everyone can do that. And some people, unfortunately, they're going to have to say, okay, I can be on the episode, of the podcast talking about this show, but I've only seen these seasons. And I'm like, that's fine. That's just as good as it's going to do, because The hardest part is even finding fans, because there's some people who are fans, but they're not into being on a podcast or whatever, or talking about it, or they love it, but they're not very constructive or concise about why they like it. So it's hard finding the perfect crowd with everything. Like, I especially had trouble with it when doing some of the crime shows like Luther and New York Undercover. I was just like, okay, well, people have seen movies with Idris Elba, but not everyone has seen every show he's done for whatever reason.
Exactly.
They've seen some of his movie work. Or they've seen The Wire, but they don't want to talk about The Wire because it's depressing to them, even though it's a good show. Is The Wire big over there, do you think? Especially because Dominic West and Idris Elba were on it?
Yeah. I don't know if it was at the time, but it definitely
not at the time, because, get this, it did not win any awards.
No, but it's considered
it had critical acclaim.
Yeah,
it's considered a classic, but it was just one of those, it must have just hit way too much, like, close to home, and, it definitely wouldn't have survived on regular TV because, they wouldn't have allowed, some of the language and nudity,
suppose
it was.
So I suppose it's like the Shawshank Redemption of TV, isn't it? It's similar to
kinda, that movie that does terrible with critics and theater. I call it the Blade Runner effect. Just the whole Ridley Scott movie that everyone is used to seeing as listed as like one of the best of all time, but they have to actually do the homework and realize not at the time. It was not big at the time, sir.
No, exactly. But definitely. But no, that's good. That's interesting. No, I like that. But are you happy? Are you happy with that, Cam?
Yeah, I'm fine with this. However you want to conclude it. Do you want me to end it here?
I don't mind. Yeah, I was gonna just say, I mean, obviously, just wanted to, obviously, we'll put this on your show. Just wanted to plug our little podcast as well. Not faulty, just blank. If anyone gets a chance to listen to it, check it out. It's just us three guys being stupid, really talking about 90s stuff. Really, that's about as good as it gets. But it is good fun. We have good
just
fun.
Blank, everyone.
Yeah, not faulty, just blank. Yeah, we just talk on three mates really having a laugh, and that's about it really. But it's good. We enjoy doing it. So check it out. Check it out if you can.
We'll return after these messages.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about who would win in a fight between Goku and Superman? Hi, I'm James Gavsey, and on the Who Would Win show, me and my co-host Ray ignore anything important happening in the outside world and debate fictional battles between characters from comics, movies, and video games.
We got a new show every week, and almost always am I the winner.
Yeah, not true, Ray.
In the past, we've discussed such matches as Captain America versus Darth Vader, Solid Snake versus the Iron Giant, classic matchups like RoboCop versus Terminator, and even the Muppets versus Sesame Street.
That one was crazy. So if you're a fan of geek culture and love a spirited debate, check out the Who Would Win show wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out at whowouldwinshow.com.
We let things pile up in the DVR, we add them to our queues, we wait for the DVDs and Blu-rays. We time shift. The Time Shifters Podcast. Sci-fi, horror, fantasy, superheroes, comedy, action, film, television, maybe some not-so-current events. Find us on iTunes or at timeshifterspodcast.com.
Cool thing about Blind Knowledge is we are in multiple countries. We are worldwide all across the globe. We are in the US, we are in the UK, we are in Canada, Germany, India, Japan. We're in Australia, y'all. BlindKnowledge.com. Now back to the feature presentation.
Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, Naruto, all things that we love, all manga that were originally published in the legendary magazine Weekly Shonen Jump.
But not every series can run for 300 chapters and have a hit anime. This is David.
This is Jordan.
We're the hosts of Shonen Flop. Each episode we look at manga that ran in Jump that didn't quite make it.
We discuss what it did wrong, what it did right, how the series could have turned itself around, and ultimately, was it a flop or not?
We're on all your favorite podcast apps, and you can find us at shonenflop.com.
Keep on flopping, floppers.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a Jack